Hello football! Today we have a super fight in the Champions League, that is Real Madrid Chelsea 1-1. Let's talk about how Tuchel neutralized Zidane, let's highlight the important tactical moments, and let's name the best and worst players. So let's start with the fact that in our blog post about expectations from this match, on the whole we correctly predicted the tactics of the teams, only we didn't quite guess with the lineups, but it's not scary. Real Madrid were unable to help Mendy and Valverde in the end, from which the scheme was different, and we also saw Marcelo at the start. Still, the most important task for Zidane in this match was to cover the flanks, because Chelsea has very dangerous flanks. As you can usually do, you can either choose a certain scheme and thus cover the flanks, or you can put certain players there, or you can assign certain functions to the players from the center of the field. In general, there are several options to reliably cover the flanks, but Zidane does not have these options, so he simply chooses a scheme with three certain ones, puts those who could be placed, and that's it. And in this case, it didn't look very good, but I repeat, this is not a criticism of Zidane, this is just one of the options that he had. He used it, and it didn't look very reliable, because the players were not very comfortable either. And speaking in a simple way, they interfered with each other at some point. On the right flank came Carvajal, who did not play very well, but since he was supported by Militao, there were no failures. But on the other flank, Marcelo came out, and then a failure was expected, because he needed to help someone go into the attack, and connect and have time to play from behind. Moreover, if necessary, he had to move closer to the center. So, as you could see, yeah, there are too many functions, too many tasks for a player who has not received practice for a very long time, who is not in a very good shape. As a result, he himself did not figure out what and how and at what moment it was necessary to act, because the scheme is also unusual and new and so on. And on the other hand, the player's condition is not very good, so there was such a failure. In the screenshots taken a little earlier, everything was clearly visible, that is what I'm talking about. Somewhere he did not finish, somewhere he did not come back, somewhere he cleared the zone, somewhere he moved to the center too early, or on the contrary, did not move at the right moment. That is, everything was out of place, and Chelsea on this flank is very dangerous. It was necessary to play there very reliably. This is Pulisic, who is constantly ready to burst into any space. In the same place, Ngolo Kante burst a little higher in the field, and in the end of the day, that's a failure. As for the other things, everything was as expected. A trio of midfielders in the center trying to get out through cross, Benzema sinking to the center and Vinicius in front, hoping to catch the ball and start a counter-attack. There were no surprises at all, and who was ready for all these moments? That was Tuhel, who neutralized everything to the smallest detail. And he did so much that Real for the entire match struck only one shot on target. This was the scoring chance. Moreover, this blow happened from the standard, that is not even from the game. Yes, there was one more moment when Benzema, for example, also punched cleanly on an individual skills, but Real did not create any chances from the team actions, that is, the neutralization turned out to be complete. Again, there was no shot on target from Real Madrid for the entire match. A similar thing happened the last time back in 2004, when Real Madrid played in some match against PSG. Well, as for Chelsea, it was in general more and more predictable. Chelsea's main goal was to beat Real Madrid's midfield. Therefore, N'Golo Kante comes out, and even if Kovacic was healthy, Kante would still play. Also, Mason Mount went down to them so as not to lose in numbers. And still, it was necessary to turn off Vinicius from his connections, and this was already done by Azpilicueta almost personally, and he also coped perfectly. But still, what's the most important thing when you play against Real Madrid? Of course, this is to close Toni Kroos and not give him the opportunity to prepare even some kind of diagonal pass, because if you give him freedom, this is the end, everything is lost. The guys from Liverpool will not let you lie. Remember how it was in the match against Liverpool. Toni Kroos could switch flanks, he could go higher, he could go deeper, he could take the ball, prepare an option for a pass, he could choose, he could aim, he could could do the thing, and that's it, Liverpool paid for it. But this time N'Golo Kante didn't give him a chance to even think about to whom he can make a pass. And most importantly, N'Golo Kante covered all the space around him and played more personally, played more attentively, depending on what Toni Kroos himself did. And the second important point is that he did not immediately start to take the ball away. He did not rush at the ball like a chained dog. He just imposed a fight, not letting the opponent get ready, nor letting him feel calm. That's most important. By the way, Kante fought more than any other player on the field, 21 times. He was also the best dribbler in the match. And all the same, Kante gave an advantage in the counter-attack stage. The fact is that it was he who burst into the left semi-flank, which was left by Marcelo, and it was more than once, but why did no one play with it? If anything, it was a rhetorical question, because it was simply impossible to stop Kante there, even with the whole team during this match. But for this it was possible to prepare the whole team. An excellent training manual, so to speak, for Zidane in terms of how N'Golo Kante would act possibly was in a match not a long time ago, in a cup match against Manchester City, when Chelsea was playing. There Kante played the same role, and the first goals were in that match, so Zidane should have taken this moment more attentively. Kante himself is simply wonderful, wonderful in everything, in every aspect, except for one thing. This is how he makes decisions in the final stage. It is not at the top level. Everything is fine, everything is wonderful, but that's final decision. What I'm talking about is not a very timely pass or an inaccurate pass or a wrong pass or when he overexposed the ball or didn't hold it, that is, there are the little things. Otherwise, there are no complaints at all. N'Golo Kante is the best in the match. Now let's move on to Timo Werner, who is apparently Werner who hits by. The Real started the game with pressing in the center, Real lifted up the defensive line, and Real gave the opportunity to include this very Werner. And what's more, Chelsea took advantage of this and used these throws into the game. That was how a goal was scored. That was how a couple of great chances were created. That is, Tuchel turned out to be as perspective as possible. He predicted how the Real Madrid would act. He barricaded all their strengths and used his own strength, that is everything that we listed. Mount went down to the center so that there would be an advantage in the center of the field. Kante ate just everything that was possible, and the most important thing, he ate Toni Kroos, that is, he neutralized the strength. As Peliqueta covered the Vinicius, the defense was not mistaken, Pulisic turned out on his individual skills at the right moment, so everything was correct, everything is perfect. Literally beautiful. That's a masterpiece, with everyone except Timo Werner. Perhaps the only thing for which he can really be praised is for his efficiency. He went down to the center and worked out and, if possible, pressed. But still you have to score, my friend Timo. Already in the first minutes he did not score from a couple of meters, hit in the center. Then there were, for example, moments with Surs when he did not reach with his head, and a couple more moments in which even Jesus would probably have scored. Oliver Giroud would definitely have scored, so we advised Tuchel to place him before the match, but unfortunately he did not let him out. But apparently there were reasons for that, although during the match he could have let him out. As for Werner, honestly, I'm shocked, and he himself was in shock. You saw his face, his facial expressions, how he himself was surprised, how he can be so unlucky. It's really fierce, his physiognomy was rotten at every screwed up moment. It also reflects that absolutely every other thing was perfect. I'm sure that these bad things will pass, and I'm sure that Werner will succeed. You just need to give a little more time. Unfortunately, such an abnormal and unsuccessful segment can occur for an individual player, even for a separate team as a whole. But anyway, you just think about this figure. Timo Werner has already screwed up 21 clear scoring chances this season. That is a clear moment that should have ended with a goal 21 times. Not a single player in the Premier League has reached such a mark. But Werner, don't worry, good luck, I believe in you, let's chat on Skype today. Naturally, Christian Pulisic should also be noted. His main task is to turn on the individual skills and time. In the end, the goal is the perfect demonstration that he has coped with this task. He chose the moment for the jerk, left all the defenders in a fool, outplayed the goalkeeper, made a bunch of touches in the penalty area before the kick, and no one could stop him. And this is on the one hand a mistake of the defense of Real. They can and should be scolded for it, but on the other hand, this is the genius of Pulisic. He just at some point turned out as some kind of divine messenger. As a result, Chelsea did everything perfectly. Everything was right. There was nothing to complain about except Timo Werner's realization. But as for Real, you see, Real only needs one moment. Just one moment happened, they scored, and that's it. And there is no point in discussing this moment, discussing it in detail, because this happens, because this is El Real Madrid. Now the question arises, what could Zidane have done during the break to somehow change the game? I think it was possible to release Isco instead of Marcelo and to descend Casemiro in the field so that he would play without connections, only in the support zone. That is, it would be the usual 4-1-4-1 scheme, where Vinicius would sit lower and Isco was located closer at him. What does it do? In fact, it has a lot of benefits. Firstly, Casemiro would play in the support zone and cover these leaky half flanks. In particular, the one where N'Golo Kante constantly broke through from time to time, and the zone arose there, that is, Casemiro would play more reliably in his support zone, and the team as a whole would look more serious in terms of positional defense. At the same time, this scheme is more suitable and familiar for them, their very usual manner of play, and that's what's most important. Secondly, on the field, in addition to Toni Kroos, there were practically no players with creative abilities who can give some kind of pass, who can, using a pass, take the team from defense to attack. In short, I'm talking about players who can be creative at a certain moment, because Toni Kroos is covered constantly by N'Golo Kante, who never fizzled out and never got tired. And the presence of Isco, it would just help the Real Madrid add in this component. That is, N'Golo Kante would always have a choice at any moment, whether to go to the player with the ball, for example, for Isco to Toni Kroos, so that the pass does not go to him, or in other way around, if the ball was in the possession of another player, that is, it would greatly complicate the play of N'Golo Kante in this match. And thirdly, the most important thing is that it would give variability ahead and support for Vinicius, because in this match the Brazilian was firstly covered by Azpilicueta, and secondly, next to him there were a few options to somehow beat him. And Isco and Vinicius had a certain understanding in the same match against the Atalanta. Remember, when Isco went nominally to the position of the attacker, but at the same time sank deeper, well, roughly speaking, into the position of the false nine, while shifting a little closer to the left flank just in time for Vinicius. They could have played up with each other, for example, against a fullback or against a midfielder, and he could also hold back by pulling on one of the players. Vinicius burst in and made a pass on him, that is, at least some kind of variability would arise for Real Madrid in this match. At the same time, there would be a balance, but Zidane decided not to change anything much. I don't understand why, apparently everything suited him. In the second half, Chelsea also slowed down, and Real got hooked lower, and Marcelo played more closely, and therefore the impression was that everyone was happy with a draw, although in fact no one would benefit from it. The Chelsea, with its defense, of course can hope for 0-0 at home, but you need to remember that Real Madrid will return several players at once. Mendy, Valverde, most likely Sergio Ramos, and they needed literally 1-2 moments and that's it. They have already made a goal. That is, Chelsea had to score while the Real Madrid was not yet in full combat readiness, and in order to feel more confident in response. And Real in turn also need a different score. They also need to score, because given how difficult it was to create chances for them, and in combination with how Chelsea feels good and confident and positional defense, these two components can knock out Real Madrid from the Champions League in the second match. In conclusion, what is the bottom line? Chelsea was head and shoulders above. Both statistics and visual impressions reflect this, but their implementation let them down. Real Madrid fulfilled the minimum task and Zidane certainly amazes. He has Carvajal just after injury, Hazard after injury, Marcelo without practice, Varane after illness. The old people in the center play without rest and it's generally not clear how they are still alive. So, friends, I think you agree that for Zidane this is a whole achievement to play against Chelsea like this. It's time to finish, I'm leaving in English way.